over here. So I'm okay. There we go. Everything's live, and oh, now it's showing up. All right, so everything's live. Apparently, there was a delay for StreamYards because it said it was live, and then it held up a few seconds before it actually showed it was live on my end, anyway. Just saying hi to everybody that ends up dropping in here. What's up, people? This is supposed to be my thing, not yours. My son's got like a whole thing. He just wants to talk over me. Yeah, 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 yeah. So figured I'd do more. I'm just gonna do a bunch of these now I'm thinking about it, where I just talk about the random stuff that pops into my head as far as like game ideas and things. And I preferred to do this one at home and not be out and about and have me sounded like Robotron, RoboCop, distorted through a blender. Um, I'd rather you actually be able to hear me clearly and not sound like I'm being processed through a cheese grater. So thank you anybody for joining in. If you've had the time or if you're catching the playback, either way, your viewership is very much appreciated. And I'm just going to rattle off some random ideas that I was having. And I was sitting down thinking about it. I was like, I could just do a discussion on this right now. I don't have to. I was going to wait until later on in the evening, but I know my wife wants to spend some time together. So I figured I'd just do this now. And if anybody's interested in catching it, they'll catch it later on. So we're live on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter or X. If you're on X, you can make comments. I can see them. They will show up. So if you really feel like making a comment, go for it. It's fine. You can do so. So I was just thinking, and again, just random thoughts popping in my head. And well, this one isn't completely random. I've had thoughts about it before. And actually, I was chatting with Sprite Remix. What was it? Sometime in the middle of last week. It was either the middle of last week or the end of last week. And he was just talking about thoughts that he had for Capcom versus SNK 3. And we kind of rattled some thoughts back and forth. And it was on my mind. So I was sitting there thinking, like, this would be a good time for Capcom and SNK to go ahead and renew whatever license they had or whatever partnership they had or come up with a new contract, because people would want to see this happen now, especially because now more people are familiar with SNK stuff than they were before due to Smash. So I think now would be a good time to capitalize on that and go ahead and say, yeah, we're bringing the crew back together, putting them all in this game again, and we're going to start working on having this be a returning series. Sounds like he agrees. And I'm not going to go into all the details of what we talked about because that was a very long conversation. Just some things I would like to see them do if they ever did renew the license, because not licensed, but if they ever made a new contract for it, it had been in my thoughts for a while. And I say this about a lot of fighting games because it's gotten away from everyone having their own dedicated home fields, their own dedicated stages. And it's been like, well, why don't they have their own dedicated stages or locations? And I can't figure out why, for the life of me, they don't, other than they don't want the characters to just be stuck on one location all the time. But if you're playing the game as the different characters, they're not necessarily stuck on that singular location anyway. So I'm like, why not do that? Why not go ahead and see where this can go and see what you can do with it, but also bring characters or use characters that don't really get much attention. Like for all of the Capcom and SNK stuff, at least all of the stuff that ended up in arcades and home console, they kept skipping over Andy Bogart for some reason. I'm like, that's Terry's brother. That's his. If Terry's the one, he's the two. Like you give Ryu his number 2, which is Ken, but you don't give Terry his number 2, which is Andy. But then they would have also had to have done the same thing for Yo and Robert, because Robert is his number two. Robert is literally Ken in another sense. He's like another universe version of Ken. He was just another rich dude who knew how to fight really well. So I'm like, and it would have been interesting to see those two characters go up against each other, like see Ken and Robert fight, have them talking trash about each other, maybe comparing each other's pretty boy status or talking about who's richer. Like, it'd be a funny conversation to have the two of them talk about who's the better rich fighter. At least at the very least it'd be interesting. So I'm like, y'all just skipped over all these number twos, and then they skipped over characters like Guy and Fei Long from the Capcom side, and I'm like, I get that y'all had a limited number of characters. I understand that, and I can't fault you for not putting in a bunch of all these characters. But I'm like, Guy and Fei Long, like Guy, I would want, because I want him I would want him and Andy to go against each other, because that would be a cool fight to see. But then Fei Long would match up really well with a lot of different characters. Oh, what's wrong? What's up? The game cheating on you? The game not working? You don't have to scream, you know. Come here. Calm down. It's okay. It's cool. But then there was Karin, who I also would have loved to have seen in a crossover game. I mean, they brought her back with Street Fighter 5, so it was nice to see her in that. I don't think she's in 6. As far as I know, she's not in 6. Because they will always be a Bruce Lee like character. Well, yeah, there's always going to be Bruce Lee like characters, but Fei Long is still Fei Long. Like the actor that knows how to fight really well. Like, come on, just throw him in there. Like, there's a bunch of, like, if you put Fei Long and Han Fu in a Capcom vs SNK matchup, that'd be, because Fei Long is Bruce Lee and Han Fu is Jackie Chan. Who wouldn't want to see that? Okay, little boy, chill out. Calm down. Keep screaming, you're gonna have a headache. It would be cool to see those things happen. Like, they threw in Joe, and you matched Joe against Sagat, but that's not really a good matchup. If I would have put Joe against anybody from Capcom, it would have been Adon, because that makes more sense. Even though they actually matched Joe up against Dan, which made no sense whatsoever. Hey, Dark Void. So they matched Joe up against Dan, and Joe is, as far as a fighter, Joe is way better than Dan. Joe is on par with Andy as far as fighting skills go. So you not only do you skip out on Andy, you throw in Joe, but then you lower Joe to the level of Dan as far as considerations go, which doesn't make any daggone sense. And I guess, yeah, Joe versus Adon would make far more sense. And I guess it's because Dan really doesn't have an actual equivalent in King of Fighters. You've wondered why Dan was a Street Fighter character? He was made to make fun of Yo and Robert. That's all he was for. He was made to be a gag version of the two of them, to kind of try to say that the characters from like Art of Fighting or King of Fighters don't match up with Street Fighter characters. But then after the crossover games, they ended up improving Dan to actually match up better with the other characters when you play with them. So they disproved themselves with doing that. One way or the other, they ended up disproving themselves. But then I think about it, if you had Takuma, like normal Takuma, and have him match up against Goken or Akuma or base Akuma. And Mr. Karate, it depends on if we're talking about Takuma Mr. Karate or we're talking about Ryo Mr. Karate. Because if it's Ryo, then that version of him matches up with Street Fighter 3 Ryu. So I'm like, it tracks very well to have them match up like that. I'm just. And then Franco Bash. Franco Bash is another character I would love to see from the SNK side thrown in there. JJ, can I have my hands? Am I allowed to have my fingers? No? Okay. But I'd like to see Franco Bash end up in there because he's sort of a mixed martial artist. He really he's a dirty fighter. But you put Franco Bash in and have Balrog fight him and Balrog being caught off guard by him because he fights dirty. But I mean, Balrog would end up ultimately winning that fight, but it'd be an interesting fight. So I'm like, y'all just and Capcom versus SNK 2 was really close to being it was close to being near perfect for the setup that they gave you. And like when I was talking with Sprite, or chatting with Sprite, we went back and forth over the idea of how the different grooves work. I mean, don't really have to do that here, but also how the teams would be matched up. Now, my thought, and I'm guessing he was thinking along the same lines as we were talking about it. Like every team, the teams would be set up in teams of 3, but everybody would still be treated as individual fighters. Do not say but. We are not running with that name Kushnud, but his name is Marco Rodriguez. We are not running with that name. And if we're talking about him, I can't say honestly. I mean, he's Brazilian, so you would think he would match up with Sean, but his skill level is over Sean's. His skill level, if you were to compare the two of them, it's like he's like he'd be around the level of Ryu in Street Fighter 2 versus what Sean is. Sean is a skilled character. People don't really know that because they turned him into a gag. But Sean is actually a skilled fighter. He's just not as skilled as the characters you see in Street Fighter 3 at that point in time. And one of the reasons he's not as skilled is because he's trying to train himself to be like Ken instead of using the Brazilian jiu-jitsu he grew up using, which means that he has to learn a whole new way of fighting and adapting to fights. And all of that information isn't in the games. That's all of the extra media stuff that you find out with them. But Sean still wouldn't be. He'd be a decent fight for Marco, but he wouldn't be on par with him. It would be. I would actually watch that. I would like to see how that fight would play out, though, outside of Mugen. Hold. Did you want the? Okay, you got the game back on. But who would I put? Who would you put him against? It couldn't be a Shoto. It couldn't be one of Capcom's Shotos because they don't have one that matches up with him right now. The closest you could get, and as much as I dislike this character, the closest you could get is Luke. Luke is the closest you get. And again, I don't like him, but that's as close as you get. Oh, hold on. Phone call from the wife. Be right back. Sorry. It was an emergency call, so I kind of had to take that one. Um, who would match up with B. Janetta? Actually, I put Karin against her. The rich girl with everything and the girl that likes to be a pirate and steal stuff. There would be a reason for them to fight because you could easily see B. Jeanette trying to break into her mansion and steal like jewels and stuff, and that ends up being a fight between the two of them. Wonder who would win that one though. Story that would be cool to do though. I think that would be that would be a pretty good matchup. Um, and I said you pair Marco against Luke. Yeah, Marco against Luke would make sense. I still don't like Luke, but Marco against Luke makes sense. Okay, good job. You got excited. I could run through a lot of these different characters. Like you could, if we were to take Kane from there, I'd put Kane up against depending on how Bison would be, like especially if it's Bison with his original body, I put Kane up against current Bison. I think their skills would be around the same thing. The Bison could be matched up against several different people in SNK. There's actually a lot of different people he would match up against because there are a lot of characters at that tier for SNK, which is bad for Bison. Because if he was trying to run the gauntlet, he's definitely losing somewhere. He might get through one or two, but he ain't making it beyond that. Or even Grant against Akuma, like base Akuma, not like with Shin or Oni. But baseline Akuma, I think he'd be a decent fight against too. Now, one character I would love to see. Now, here's who I would actually put Sean against, and that would be Bob Wilson. Bob Wilson versus Sean would actually be a good matchup. Because they, again, both from that general area, and Bob fights with Caprera. I would like to see him against Sean or Elena. One of the two of them. They'd be a good matchup for him. I think Sean because I could see the two of them end up getting along with each other. I mean, not like he'd have a fight with Elena or anything, but I could see the two of them. Not that he would dislike Elena. I just think him and Sean would probably bond easier if they fought each other. I don't know. I don't know about the chain. I don't know about that one. I can't really say for sure. That might be interesting though. I'm just thinking about it. But instead of diving deep into all the character matchups, because you could do that for days on end. I did say I would like to see characters have their own or specified stages, but I would do it in a way that every Capcom character has a matching stage for an SNK character. So like Ken and Iori would have the same stage, but at different times of day, kind of like what Street Fighter Alpha did when they first brought it out. So you have it be on Ken's boat in the middle of whatever area they have it in. And during the day, Ken is the one you fight there, but during the night you fight Iori there. Like because his band is working for Ken, technically. So his band is there working for Ken, and then it changes depending on who you have. And so again, daytime, if you put B Jeanette against Karin, daytime Karin's in her mansion, nighttime, you got B Jeanette in there, and you see broken windows in the background, like she broke in the windows to sneak in. Stuff like that would be pretty cool to do. And I wish that they would do more of that and then give the characters back their own themes, even though everybody has a theme, but they don't necessarily have their own themes. And even though Terry would match up better against Ryu, I'd put Terry as far as stage matchups. I'd probably have him against Guile again. Mostly because you could put them in a stage in Southtown, which is just another version of New Orleans at this point. But you have Terry being Southtown during the night, like he's in the bars fighting and stuff, or even not even necessarily. He could be late night, whereas Guile would be evening, and that again they could do this for the characters, not necessarily meaning those are their specified rival matchups, but just to make it interesting. Because you put Sean and Bob Wilson and Sal Powell again, just different times of day. They did it with Street Fighter Alpha, and they did it again with Street Fighter 3. So for me, that would make sense to do. And that would also mean some characters would have to have multiple stages, especially depending on the rivalry. Like especially if it's like how Street Fighter Alpha 2 had a specified stage for Ryu versus Sagat. Like if you're playing with Sagat, you have that Australian stage with the grass and stuff. So stuff like that could really be done. Yeah, you picked up right on it. That's exactly what I mean, Trinell. So basically telling a story with the environments. And through the character dialogue and stuff like that, but the different environments show, hey, this person's here at this time, and during this particular time, you'll find another character here, which will also, I would love for them to, if they were to do this, do another like the world tour mode that's in Street Fighter 6. Do something like that so that the times of day actually matter if you're like playing like as a you're playing in it with your own created character who's learning or trying to build themselves up as a fighter. Do that type of thing so that you go to different locations at different times and you find different characters. But they would also have to expand how the world map works, which is cool, which would be cool with me. I'd be all for it because I definitely the one. Hey, yeah, take my character and put him on a flight to go to Japan and end up at a monastery that Ryu is currently at, acting as a monk, because you could see him doing that. So that type of stuff, I would be cool with seeing them do. All right, didn't know Mickey Mouse was that exciting for you, but okay. Okay, JJ, chill. Um, I could go on for hours about a Capcom versus SNK or an SNK versus Capcom type of thing. It's just like there are so many matchups that would be pretty cool to watch and have these characters have dialogue with each other. That is just like a huge missed opportunity, especially now when so many characters have had their stories updated and new details added. Like Sean having his elder sister and potentially bringing in his elder brother into the series as playable characters, maybe even his grandfather. Again, a bunch of characters that just get neglected happen to be sitting around, and I would be all for it. Heck, maybe even tell the story of how Zeku created the Strider core. Because I'm pretty sure he's the one that did it, since he has that move set in Street Fighter 6. Is it 6? No, 5. He has that move set in Street Fighter 5. Or is it? I haven't played in a while, so you'll have to forgive me for not remembering which one it is. I'm pretty sure it's 5, though. But I want to move away from the Capcom versus SNK stuff for a moment. Because there's another idea that just spawned into my head. And it's from a series that hasn't had much done with it in very, very long. I think the last was it Gunstar Heroes originally appeared on Sega Genesis. Then Gunstar Superheroes, which was the sequel, came out on the Game Boy Advance. So it's been a minute since this series has seen the light of day. And I would be very happy to see them do a new Gunstar Heroes game. Now, some people would probably think it's odd, but I'd want to see it transition to 3D and have you not necessarily playing as a character, well, playing as a character in the game, but not necessarily as a known character. Like one of the characters are trained at the Gunstar Academy to become a member of the Guns. What do they call it in the game? Now I'm not remembering. I gotta look this up. It's like I remember. It's, let me see. What is their police force called? Nope, 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 nope. But whatever. Everybody will probably understand what I mean. But just have them have you play as a character training to become a member of their intergalactic police force, because I'm pretty sure that's what Gunstar Heroes became as of superheroes. Um, and have you create your own character, but have characters that take on the positions of red, blue, yellow, and green as the core four, and you become your own member. Like let you pick one of the other colors that are in the rainbow that isn't one of those four, and have them reference you by that color once you have graduated from the academy as a member of their team. That way you don't have to use the name of the person playing, because everybody would be a created character, but do it in like a 3D or a 3D third person type of deal, not first person. There's so much first person stuff that is at this point annoying. But depending on what color you pick, chooses what specialty you have. Now, obviously, I haven't thought it far enough to think of what the specialties would be, because I know red is good at being nimble and moving about while shooting, whereas blue, you could consider the stationary cover man. Yellow is good for communications and support, backup support, and green is good with hand to hand combat. Those are the four that we know of as far as that goes at current. So with red, green, blue, and yellow taken, that leaves orange. That will leave orange. Gosh, you just threw my whole thought process up. Orange, indigo, violet, or purple, which is the same thing. White and black. So that leaves you those five. Brown is not being considered because brown is not in the rainbow, and technically white and black are, but they are shades. If you combine all the colors together, you get white. If you take all the colors away, you get black. So they still work within the contrasting of the rainbow in and of itself. So just, this is what threw me off right here when you said that. Even though black technically would not be the evilest color on the spectrum, but since no color specifically would be evil. But yeah, that way you one of those five colors has their own specialty. You could say orange has a specialty of the weapons, like being able to do power up the weapons in ways the others can't. Uh Indigo, what could I say for Indigo? What would be their specialty? Indigo's specialty would be speed. I'd say Indigo's specialty would be speed, fast movements. Violet, the specialty could be along the lines of combining weapons, whereas Orange powers up weapons Violet would be able to combine them. Nope, black is the absence of color and white is the amalgamation of colors. That's why if you shine a white light into a prism, you could get a rainbow from it. So yeah, you had them flipped. But white now, white and black, I don't know. I don't know how I would use those or what the specialty would be to fit those. But it had to be something interesting because the others fit kind of very well into it. I guess white be could take the like white could be the one that takes the element of your weapon and adds it to physical combat. So like another specialist for hand-to-hand combat, but in a different way. Not necessarily as skilled as green, but being able to add like the weapon to their CQC. And black, now I would give black the ability to slow things down. That would be the specialty for black. So, like in a bullet hell type situation where you have stuff coming at you from all angles, black would have a special ability to slow things down. Now, obviously, all the characters have like a basic setup that's the same, but then you have the specialties that allow you different uses and things for the game. And also, those specialties could come into gameplay scenarios. Like each specialty allows you to traverse a level differently, and there are certain specialties you have to have in order to reach certain places or find certain things. So, with black being able to slow time down, or I think Indigo I said will have speed. So black or indigo might be able to travel the same places, but they'd have a different method of doing it. Whereas indigo would be able to speed through somewhere, black would be able to slow the environment in the areas around them down. Since we're going with absence of light, I would say absence of speed, absence of momentum, which actually would make sense if you thought about it that way. That could actually work. And again, do a 3D style game. Um, Now, thinking about how like an online play scenario would work with that is either with people working in tandem in levels as a squad, which would have to be up to 5 people, or hmm, that is a good question. Who would I want to direct that? I mean, because Traveler's Tales are the ones that made the original. I think was it Way Forward that did superheroes? Who? Oh no, it was Treasure. It was still Treasure. Treasure did it. Traveler's Tales was Gunstar Heroes, but Treasure was also on that project, and then Treasure did superheroes. Good question is who would do 3D? Who would do it in 3D though? Being that it would being that it would be an action heavy game, Platinum. I would have Platinum working with. I'd have Platinum working with Treasure on this. That would be who I'd do it. Get to do it because it would be action heavy, and you'd have to have somebody who's good at doing those animations, and all of the stuff that I mentioned fits right within Platinum's wheelhouse for the individual colors. So that would be who I get to do it. Because goodness, some of those specials and super moves that would end up coming out of this would look amazing. And if not Platinum, then the other choice I would go with would be Team Ninja. See if they would be willing to work with them on it. But Platinum would be first choice. Because that could be something. That'd be something really cool. You could have a whole different style of, instead of having some large scale alien invasion happening on one planet, you could have a whole invasion of an entirely different species from a whole separate solar system coming in trying to take over. And that would work. That would technically work. Either, or depending on what, how the style of the game is, it could either be Bayonetta or her wonderful uh wonderful 101 counterpart. Could be either one of those. Or at that point, if we're dealing with the color spectrum, it could be any of the wonders from the Wonderful 101 making cameos, or it could be many of them. Actually, it could be a lot of different characters just popping in out of Sega's catalog, just showing up in the background in different places. Again, they have the resources to do it. They have the teams to do it. It's just the idea has to be presented in the right way. Yep. Yeah, you right on that. Bayonetta would be black for which time? And I hadn't I wasn't even thinking about that when I said black would be in control of time, or at least the ability to slow it down. I had at no point thought about that, but it makes sense. It fits right along with the theming. So I'd be up for that. I'd be down for seeing that stuff done. Hell, you could even you could even throw in just like a side mission where you meet Bayonetta and she's pretending that she can't fight, like, just because she's bored, and she like during the whole thing, she's like, "I'm just bored and I want to see how you guys do things, so I'm going to pretend I can't fight." Like she'll do the whole damsel thing, but be super exaggerated. Like have someone attack her. They don't actually hit her, but she does the fall in such a way it looks like she got hit, but the fall is so dramatic, like handsome Squidward. Oh, that'd be funny. I'd be down for playing that particular game, and it's just also because I want to see more series get more attention, and we know Sega's doing like a whole revival of a bunch of stuff, and I'm pretty sure they got waves of this planned. I mean, it makes sense to go ahead and throw Gunstar Heroes in there somewhere. Somewhere. Oh no, I'm hit. Whatever shall I do? It just fall over. Pretends to be knocked out. Oh man. Oh, that and the funny thing is at the end of the mission, where at the end of that particular side mission, it looks like everything's going to fall to crap, and she just decides, okay, I'm done messing around, and she just wipes out whatever's in front of you. Because you put up a good fight, you put up a good fight, but you just ain't winning. And she just says, okay, I'm sorry for making you do all this. Then she gives you something and leaves, like something that matters to your character's specialty, and then leaves, and you don't see her at all after that. That would be cool, and I'd be interested in seeing that work. Like so, for like black, you'd get something that could double how long you can slow time down. For white, you could get something that increases the potency of your close range attacks when you're combining them with the weapon elements. Orange, for your speed, something that doubles, maybe even triples your character's speed when they enter that mode. Um, was it orange? No, that was indigo with speed. Orange was doubling firepower, so something like even higher boosting for your firepower. And For Violet, which was to combine powers, which basically is what they did in OG Gunstar Heroes anyway, but just make that not everyone's ability. So for Violet, with the combination of powers, at being allowed to add in a third, like so you could get a third weapon and element and put that in, combine all three of them. Yeah, that makes sense. That would be cool to do because it would make sense to your character. Like you get a third weapon that you could cash and basically be able to combine two at a time or all three. So yeah, that'd be pretty cool to do. That way it could be used situationally, depending on what you want to do with it. But the third pickup would be turned into a temporary weapon, whereas your normal two that you keep on you stay infinite. So you could trade off weapons that you don't necessarily want. But you could also use the weapon that you don't want to boost the ones that you do. Because that way you don't want to overpower that one specific ability to the point where it kind of breaks the game. Chill out. Chill out. I think that all makes sense. Where are you trying to go? There you go. You good now? Because you climbed up on me just to jump down. We done? Okay. I was just like, it would be. I'm sitting here thinking about how it would look, though. Like, would you? I would also want you to be able to design how your outfit looks. Sort of take a cue from Xenoblade, but let you be able to adjust how everything looks on your character, or I'm more like not Xenoblade, more like Splatoon. Splatoon, more like where you could earn or find different bits of clothing. I wouldn't have the clothing have any effect on gameplay though. Unfortunately, I would not have have any effect on gameplay. You just find different outfits that you can curtail your look to what you want it to be, but nothing that specifically gives your character any advantage or disadvantage because that's what their different color codings are for. Yeah, that could work. I think that does itself some justice. All right. Was there anything else I would want to talk about? Because I mean, the only other thing I could do with talking about that is diving into how the story would work, and I really don't want to do that just yet. That would be something I if I want to do that, that'd be something I would do as a Game Idea Foundry Talk podcast and have a couple other people on with me. So me right now, I don't want to do a dive into that because while I can bounce ideas off the chat, uh, it's easier real time with people communicating back and forth at the same time, and chat is a little bit slow in comparison to that. Is there one I can throw out real quick? Real quick. Let's see if I can pull an idea from the ether and do a quick talk about it. Well, since I'm on Sega, I'm trying to think. Nope, that series wasn't made by Sega. But Spellcaster, which was on the Sega Master System and had a sequel on the Genesis called Mystic Defender. Spellcaster was more of an action RPG, whereas Mystic Defender really played more into the platformer style of gameplay. But a sequel to that, an action adventure RPG, that would actually be something I'd be down for. I would be interested in seeing that happen because again, and that was based off of a manga. I can't remember the name of it right now, Um, but let me just, just look it up real quick. What is the name? Yeah, Kujaku. Kujaku. That was the it was Kujaku O was the manga it was based on, and I would love to see that happen. Hey, hold on, be right back. My daughter just grabbed something I had to snatch out her hand that could have ended in disaster. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna run off real quick. But spellcaster, mystic defender, I don't know what they would call it. Honestly, actually, if anything, I would rather they just go with the name of the manga it's based off of. If they were to do another game, just call it Kujaku, because a lot of people don't know what that is, but it would make them interested enough in finding out what it is. But do it as an action adventure RPG or an action RPG that plays similar to the vein of Bayonetta, because of how the magic system will work and the fact that the character is capable of fighting hand to hand. Whereas you could use magic in place of her using the different witch guns, which are still magical relics. Yeah, that would make sense. I could see that would work for that series. Because I'm just thinking of a 2D to 3D translation for or transition for it, and that's what makes the most sense to me and would be the most interesting. Now, as far as like the story would work, it would be far and away from what Bayonetta was, but you're basically still dealing with the same types of things. And if they made a sequel to that at this point, you could actually do a crossover after that with those two franchises. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to run it that way. Do it with an RPG leveling system as well as having the skill tree. So as you get stronger, as your character levels up, you do get see the strength benefits of it. So you potentially will be revisiting areas where you'll see how much stronger your character actually got with your basic stuff, but you still would have the skill tree and the choices to pick how your character evolves. And yeah, that could work itself out. Now I don't know if you'd necessarily be using the same character that was in the first two games. I mean, it would only make sense to me that you do, but it depends on what angle whoever is working on it would want to go. Like, do they want to stay completely true to the original manga and the source from the game, which I think they still differed quite a bit, or do they want to do something a bit more out there or more future forward for that particular series? And since I haven't really thought of a story or I haven't sat down and thought of a story, I think the best thing would be to just leave it up to whoever's working on it at the time. But it would be something really cool and interesting to see being done. And again, it's a franchise that hasn't really had much play over the years. Like Mystic Defender came out in 1989, and actually, Sega did develop this. I was I was wrong. Develop Sega and Shueisha developed it. So at that point, like you've already got two heavy hitters behind it, two big names behind it. Might as well at that point go ahead and see what else you can crank out. Again, I'm up for seeing this stuff be done, and I am more than willing to randomly talk about it and potentially drum up some interest if it's not being done. I'm all for going back and bringing back older series and also doing crossovers and stuff. So it's sitting on my mind to talk about these things, but I may actually sit down and do, now that I've thought all this up, I may actually sit down and do a cross zone episode for this specific pairing because I hadn't thought about it before. I do have one I'm working on for Bayonetta and Devil May Cry, but Bayonetta with this might also be a good mix too. Because again, you're still dealing with the same elements. You're dealing with the same things. You're just dealing with a different type of character. So it might be pretty cool. It might be worth sitting down and going over it, go back over the stories of both of those games, as well as read through some of the stuff about that actual manga. Who knows? I might actually have to do that and see where I end up landing. I think I will do that though. I don't know how soon that video is going to come out. It's probably going to be like in a year or two, but it depends on how I reshuffle things. I don't know. But now that it's sitting on my mind, I kind of want to do it. I kind of want to sit down and be like, how is this going to work? Because I still have to research that series because I don't even remember the character's name anymore. So, which is sad, but it's been so long since I've played or interacted with anything from it, I hadn't thought about it. And then sitting there was like, what game could I talk about? And then that popped into my head. I was like, okay, that does make some sense. So I might just go ahead and do that. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap up because I wasn't planning on being on here very long. And again, you guys are just going to get random streams from me at certain times. I do plan on making sure I do some game streaming. I figured out what the problem was with the last time I streamed the game and why it wasn't working. There was a setting in StreamYard I didn't activate that I didn't notice when I last did it. But the next time I do run some gameplay, at least when it's coming from directly from my PC, it should work fine next time. And you should hear the game as well as me. Because I was ticked off that happened, but there was nothing I could really do about it while I was in the middle of the live stream because I would have had to close everything out and fix it and then redo it. And at that point, I was already going. So I'll do that. But thank you to everybody that sat and watched me and listened to me spout off for nearly an hour. And thank you to Trinell for jumping into the chat and interacting and throwing some ideas at me. So we'll see what other stuff we can come up with randomly that now I have to come up with videos for or do the podcast for. So yeah, that's it. Thank you guys very much for listening. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games and peace out, everybody.